Hello there and welcome to the channel. Now, if by some miracle of Gene Roddenberry you are not familiar with the Miranda class starship, we are talking today about the USS Lantree in this quick little video. The USS Lantree was a Miranda class starship commissioned at some point in the late 23rd century. These classes of ship were a spin-off design of the Constitution class vessel. They were a bit more of a workhorse, they were shorter range, a little slower, but many of them, some variants, mostly in its stock form, vessels like the USS Reliant, for example, were actually a bit more of a combat-orientated variant of the Constitution class, with a more compact design, a bigger weapons loadout, strong shields, enhanced armor. You had the big powerful phaser cannons mounted on the roll bar, the torpedo launchers also mounted there to give it a better field of fire. The actual internal volume, interestingly, of a Miranda class was greater than that of a Constitution class, but this was because they carried bigger cargo bays, shuttle bays, things of that nature. And they served a function within Starfleet at this time as not only being the tireless workhorse of the Federation Starfleet, but also one of its most utilitarian and versatile ships, mostly going on what the crew of the Cerritos would probably have called second contact missions. So you got the ships like the Enterprise, the Constellation, the Defiant going out there doing all the glory work, and then your Mirandas doing your, general planetary surveys looking for uninhabited worlds to obliterate with the Genesis device. The Lantree was one such vessel. Now, there are many variants of the Miranda class because the Miranda class was, again, it was the Ford Transit van of Starfleet. And this particular version, USS Lantree NCC 1837, lacked the roll bar, and as a result the enhanced weaponry of other Miranda class, indicating that it was not the more combat-orientated patrol vessel variant of the Miranda class, but actually just a operational survey ship. There were many variants that were actually given their own names, such as the Soyuz class, but that's out of the scope of this video. The Lantree was actually confirmed to be a Miranda class. The ship, by the 24th century, by 2365 more specifically, because of its advancing years, and despite the fact that, again, the Miranda class had been so successful in Starfleet history, it had now become relegated to a colony supply vessel, running errands around Starfleet and the Federation. Absolutely vital work, not to be condemned in any way. This might not be, again, the glamorous work that people sign up to Starfleet for, thinking, I'm going to join Starfleet, I'm going to end up on board a Galaxy-class starship exploring the final frontier, and you end up aboard a Class 6 supply ship, a 23rd century Miranda-class vessel, a relic of a bygone age, and a ship that's probably falling apart and held together with spunkiness and hope. But nonetheless, it is absolutely vital work, and as I've stressed many times in many of my previous videos, these are the unsung heroes of the Federation. Yeah, they don't get the glory and the glamour, but it's where a lot of officers cut their teeth. Picard did not start out aboard the Enterprise. He started out aboard much more, again, run-of-the-mill, more standard vessels and operations. In fact, many higher officers didn't even always serve aboard starships. Many were serving on planetary bases, space stations, running around on shuttles and transports, freighters. And that is not to be sneered at, because that is where you learn. As we saw with people like Harry Kim, he would cut his teeth on away missions aboard an alien vessel like the Nightingale. Just because you don't start out where you want to be doesn't mean that you're not going to get there from where you start. So the Lantree may have been a 100-year-old now survey vessel with limited armaments and speed, but was still an essential part of the fleet. Old, not forgotten. But by 2365 the vessel would come to an untimely end. After visiting the Darwin Research Station and one of its crew members also picking up the Thelusian flu, within a few days the crew began exhibiting signs of an unusual disease which accelerated their aging, forcing them to emit a quarantine signal from the vessel. Now, this again attracted the attention of the USS Enterprise, who was sent to investigate what's wrong. They arrived to find the entire crew complement of 26 personnel now died from old age, with, again, Captain Talaka dying at his station, which, very admirable, sitting in his chair. Many of the crew actually dying at their stations, but all things considered, they did everything right. This may not have been the glory assignment, but what did they do? They did the right thing. They investigated it, they tried to treat it, they couldn't. They realized that they were going to die and they didn't want others to befall the same fate. So they emitted their distress signal, they emitted a quarantine signal, and they just carried on for as long as they could until they couldn't anymore, until they eventually and inevitably passed away, with a photon torpedo once and for all ending the service life of this rather historic vessel. The ship was there in the background for over 100 years, doing what it did best. In its day, it was a second contact vessel, survey ship and science vessel, one of the most advanced ships in the fleet. By the 24th century, they didn't even bother putting photon torpedoes on this thing anymore. It just had what was considered basic level Class 3 defensive armaments, basically meaning a few phasers, realistically. But, nonetheless, essential ship, which had an ignominious end to what was probably at least a distinguished and successful career. A ship doesn't stay in service for 100 years by accident.